Hello summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng and today we'll be discussing our counter picks to some of the more popular OP champions on patch 11.22. We'll be going over the runes, builds, and playstyles to effectively counter specific matchups, so the next time you run into one of these characters, you have the game knowledge and confidence to bully your opponents. We'll be starting things off with the top lane with Warwick as a pick to Camille. Warwick top isn't exactly new, but it's something that's definitely an underplayed pick. This lack of popularity means that it's like me in high school, but also most people won't really have a lot of experience against it and won't know how strong it really is. The amount of healing Warwick gets is insane. His Q alone is crazy, but when you add on his passive, pretty much no one is going to be able to duel you. Then there's the fact that you should have barrier. This often results in cheesy kills in the first couple of levels in the game. Aside from the healing, there's his E. Since Camille's hookshot is a pretty telegraphed ability, you can easily react to it with your primal howl to mitigate whatever damage that she gets on you after landing her stun. Then you pop the fear and trade back a lot harder than whatever she managed to do to you. Now for the build. For your runes, you'll take Grasp of the Undying, Demolish, Conditioning, Revitalize, Presence of Mind, and Last Stand, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For your items, start with the Doran's Blade, and then build Divine Sunderer, Bladed Steel Caps, and Titanic Hydra. Once that core is done, your next items are situational. Generally, Syrax, Thornmail, and Spare Visage are your go-tos. But if you're not really going to be grouping up, you may not want to go Syrax. You can instead go for the offensive choices like Blade of the Ruined King or Wit's End. Having solid counter picks is definitely an important part of winning in solo queue. If you're playing off the back foot from Select, odds are already pretty bad. But there's more to it than that. You also really need solid fundamentals if you're actually trying to climb. Whether you're new to the game or you have years of bad habits, it can be very difficult to find a direction on your own. Our top tier coaches over at ProGuides.com can help you figure out exactly what you need to work on. They're available 24/7, so it's never really a bad time to come and try one out. I promise, there's at least one that specializes in exactly what you're looking for. These guys have spent years reaching the top of the ladder, so why wouldn't you want to steal all their solo queue tips and tricks? All you have to do is click the link in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. Our second top lane counter is Heimerdinger into Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench's reign of oppression has gone a little bit too long in the top lane. Playing pretty much any melee champion against him is a miserable experience. You can't really do damage to him, meanwhile he'll do half of your HP with just a few slaps of his tongue. He bullies you out of the lane, ends up with a huge CS lead, and can dive you over and over again. So the only solution to really deal with that is to fight him from afar, something Heimerdinger is able to do perfectly. In this matchup, you'll be maxing your turrets for max wave pushing and sustained damage. Just make sure you ward so you don't get ganked. You'll always want to position around your turrets for max safety. The extra movement speed that you get helps you kite back if the big lump ever tries to run at you, or waddle at you, or whatever he does. And you can just use it to block his Q, rendering him completely unable to go for trades. Now, let's take a look at the build. For your runes, you'll run Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Tenacity, Cut Down, Absolute Focus, and Gathering Storm, with stat runes being Double Adaptive and Health. For your items, you sort the Doran's Ring and then build into Leandri's Anguish, Sorcerer's Shoes, and then an Oblivion Orb. Then go for Demonic Embrace and Void Staff. At this point, you'll want to upgrade Oblivion Orb to Morello in most games, but if there is a huge dive threat on the enemy team, go for Zhonya's instead. To top things off, you will pick up a Rabadon's Death Cap. Now, for the jungle, the first pick that we have is Rammus into Graves. Rammus is a nightmare for any marksman, so this one's kind of a no-brainer. Unlike a lot of other jungle counters, this isn't a matchup where you're going to be looking to actively fight him. In the early game, he'll definitely be able to win any straight-up 1v1. You'll need at least 2 full items before you're able to actually take him on. But 1v1ing champions is never the reason that you pick tanks. Instead, you're picking Rammus to prevent Graves from doing whatever he wants in teamfights. If he ever tries to dash in and do damage to anybody else on your team, react with a quick taunt to set up your allies for an easy kill. Now, let's take a look at the build that you'll be going for. For runes, run Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Unflinching, Triumph, and Alacrity, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Armor, and Health. For your items, start with the Hail Blade, and then build into Turbo Chem Tank, Tier 2 Boots, and Thornmail. The boot choice is just dependent on what you need for the game. Steel Caps, Merc Treads, and Swifties are all great options. After that's done, you go for Deadman's Plate, Abyssal Mask, and Randuin's Omen. For our second jungle matchup, we have Karthus as an answer to Rek'Sai. Let me make one thing clear. Rek'Sai is by far the best early champion in the game right now, and no one can contest her there. If you think you're going to be winning by matching her ganks, well, you're quite literally dead wrong. Any decent player will outpace you 100% of the time. Instead, you're picking Karthus to target Rek'Sai's one weakness. If the game goes too long, she starts to fall off. Karthus, on the other hand, ramps up incredibly hard. You'll spend the early game power farming, relying on exhaust to prevent Rek'Sai from freely killing you. Once the game gets to the point where most of the fighting is full-on 5v5s, you don't have to fear Rek'Sai. In fact, dying is kind of the plan as Karthus, so if you end, you could just say, it was according to plan. It means you can unload all of your damage without worrying about being CC'd. Plus, last stand gets full damage. Just remember to use your ultimate before the window expires, and if I remember correctly, that's 3 Qs and then your ultimate. I could be wrong, but you know, that's just from the top of my head. Might have to ask one of the ProGuides coach, I don't know. Now let's look at the build and see what you want here. For your runes, run Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Presence of Mind, and Last Stand. The runes being double Adaptive Force and Armor. For your items, start with the Hail Blade and then build into Leandri's Anguish, Sorcerer's Shoes, and Zanya's Hourglass. If your team needs Grievous, go ahead and pick up the Oblivion Orb, and then build into Void Staff and then Rabadon's Death Cap. For your last item, either upgrade to Morello or go for Demonic Embrace. Now, for the mid lane, we'll be talking about Kassadin as a pick into KATARINA. If you've been keeping up with our meta videos this season, then you know exactly how dominant KATARINA has been. If you haven't been keeping up with our meta videos and just playing the game, well, you'll probably find that out the hard way. Anyway, what makes Kat so broken is her ability to bully most mid laners, and then snowball any advantage that she gets hard into team fights thanks to her reset. Normally, you wouldn't think that a hyper-scaling pick would be good into a lane bully, but the thing about Kassadin is that he's actually an incredibly strong laner in the right matchups. Specifically, he does well into other melee mids, especially one that does magic damage, like KATARINA. You can burst just as hard as her, but since you have a magic shield, you come out on top every single time. You don't have to try that hard to hit your W. When she jumps in on you, it's a free hit. Q gives you a way to interrupt her ultimate, and if that's not available, you can always just jump away. Post laning phase, she'll never be able to deal with you in a side lane. And you'll be free to scale up all the way up to 16 if you aren't already strong enough to teamfight before then. Now, let's look at the build. For your runes, you'll be running Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and Magic Resistance. For your items, you'll want to start with the Dark Seal, and then pick up an early tier at some point. After that, build into your Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer's Shoes, and then upgrade your Dark Seal into Magi's. Then go for Archangel's Staff, which at this point should be Seraph's Embrace. With that done, go for Void Staff and Rabadon's. If it's too hard to maintain Magi's stacks, Lichbane and Zanya's are good alternatives if needed. Our other mid lane matchup to go over is Annie as an answer to Yasuo. Yasuo is one of the more popular mid laners of all time, and right now, he's pretty strong. You're more likely going to be seeing him every few games, and having a counter to him is pretty crucial. Thankfully, Annie is a super easy pick that anybody can pick up and play, so you don't really have to struggle in some coin flip skill matchup. There are 2 things that makes Yasuo hard to deal with for other mages. 1, he dodges skill shots by dashing through the wave with his E. 2, his wind wall can block crucial skill shots. As Annie, you can nullify both of those with your W. Their large cone is instant and easy to land, so neither of his abilities allow him to avoid it. If you use this in conjunction with your Sun, it makes for an easy Q and an auto attack for a quick Electrocute proc. Or post 6 allows you to absolutely delete him. Now let's look at the build that you'll want. For runes, run Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Mana Flow Band, and Absolute Focus, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and Armor. For your items, start with the Dark Seal and a refillable potion, then build into Sorcerer's Shoes and Rocket Belt. If you're already stacking well, buy Magi's now, otherwise get Horizon Focus and then a Soul Stealer. After that, go for Void Staff and Rabadon's. Kat and Yasuo are 2 of the most annoying champions to deal with in the game in my opinion, but I think there are a lot of mid laners that I can't stand at the moment. But it would probably take all day to cover a counter for every single one of them, so we're bound to miss a few. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What are some champions that you'd like to see us cover in the next video? Honestly, I hate Pyke, I hate Yuumi, and I hate LeBlanc. And I know not all of them are in the meta right now, but still, I hate to see them. So maybe we should do that. I don't know, let us know your answer in the comments down below. Moving things down to the bottom lane, our first matchup is Ziggs into Miss Fortune. Ziggs is maybe one of the best champions possible for climbing in solo queue, not because he's so overwhelmingly OP or anything, but because he's just so consistently good. He can neutralize any lane, even someone as oppressive as Miss Fortune, and he can always bring a lot to the table. The ability to poke and control zones around objectives is massive, and Wave Clear can help sell out games and prevent the enemy team from ever pushing any leads. Against Miss Fortune specifically, he's not just good in the laning phase. Since he plays from basically a screen away, you can just dish out your damage in fights without ever having to be anywhere close to Miss Fortune's ultimate. And if she's ulting, you can cancel it out with her satchel. For your runes, run Arcane Comet, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Gathering Storm, Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and Armor. For your items, you sort the Doran's Ring and then build into Leandri's, Sorcerer's Shoes, and Demonic Embrace. After that, you'll want Zanya's, Void Staff, and Rabadon's Death Cap. If you don't need the Zanyas, then you can go for Horizon Focus or Lichbane instead. Our other bot lane counter is Swain into Jhin. Along with Ziggs, he's been our go-to mage counter for just about every meta marksman. No matter how OP an ADC is, they can't just compete with Swain's 2v2 trading ability. If they move up to hit you, they're in range of your E. Them getting hit by that just even once can send them back into the fountain, especially if you have any type of aggressive support to follow up on it. As the game goes on, things just get more difficult and difficult. Jhin struggles to deal with tankier targets, and Jhin is about as beefy as it comes when looking at carries. He'll heal through his damage while melting through his HP. That's if Jhin isn't 20-1 by this point. The one rule when playing Swin is to only fight in team fights when your ultimate is up. If it's not up, you're just wave clearing and playing safe. Anyway, let's look at the build. For your runes, we run Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Cheap Shot, and Ultimate Hunter, with the stat runes being double Adaptive Force and Armor. For your items, you start with the Doran's Ring and then build it to Leandry's, Sorcerer's Shoes, and Zanya's. After that, go for Demonic Embrace and Rabadon's Death Cap. Your last item should be Void Staff for maximum damage, but if your team has plenty of damage and you just want to be a little bit tankier, you can go for Frozen Heart, Randuin's, or Spirit Visage. To start off our support counters, we have Rell into Blitzcrank. Rell is an incredibly OP pick, but only in the right situations. Play her against a double range bot lane, or an enemy team that wants to sit back and poke, and you'll feel completely useless. That's because Rell has a ton of CC, but it's meant for counter engaging, not starting fights yourself. Don't get me wrong, with good positioning and a good flash, you can definitely pull off a sick combo, but those are far and few between. But when you're up against Blitzcrank, that problem is solved. If he lands a hook on you, he's giving you a free pass on diving onto his team and setting up your allies to wipe them out. Let's take a look at the build that you'll want to run. For your runes, run Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, Triumph, and Tenacity, with stat runes being Ability Haste, Armor, and Magic Resistance. For your items, you'll start with the Relic Shield, and then build as the Steel Caps, Locket of Iron Solari, and Zeke's Convergence. If the game goes on long enough, your last two items will be Abyssal Mask and a Ward Stone. Finishing off our list, we have a little bit more of an off-meta pick with Zac as a counter to Soraka. Soraka's trading can be kind of oppressive in lane. Her Q does pretty decent poke on a low cooldown and gives free sustain to both her and her ADC. Plus, it slows, making it much more difficult for other engaged champions to go in. Even if they do, she has her E to silence and root them to disengage. As Zac, once you have a few points into your E, you're able to jump in on Soraka from well outside of her Q range, so she doesn't really get the chance to cut you out with Qs. Outside of lane, you'll play like Zac Jungle would, except less gold means that you'll be a little bit squishier. You just have to think about it a little bit before you jump into 5 champions. Let's look at the build that you'll want to run. For runes, run Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, Triumph, and Tenacity, with the stat runes being Ability Haste, Armor, and Health. For your items, start with the Relic Shield, Rush Lucidity Boots, and then build Locket of Iron Solari. With that done, you can go for Knight's Vow, Thornmail, and Abyssal Mask, and a Ward Stone. That concludes our latest episode of Counter Picks. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides, and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember, let us know what champions you'd like us to cover next time down in the comments below. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just be a part of the community. Can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.